Okay, let's unpack this. Today, we're diving deep into some truly uh, mind-bending ideas.
Yeah, they really challenge how we see things, don't they?
Absolutely. The source we're looking at suggests our reality, our place in it.
Yeah.
It might be fundamentally different than we thought.
That's right. The core concept here is that human emotion, or consciousness, it's not just stuck inside us.
Right.
This source suggests these could be, well, powerful forces, things that can directly influence the physical world.
The actual stuff of the universe.
Exactly, the very fabric.
And our source material for this deep dive is a transcript from a YouTube video. It features Greg Braden.
Mm-hmm. He really digs into this intersection between ancient wisdom, modern science, and this power inside us.
So our mission really is to pull out the key nuggets here. Understand the science he's talking about, the concepts.
And figure out what it all means for us. You know, how we actually experience the world day to day.
Quite a journey into
Wow.
what connects everything.
So where do you start with something this big?
Well, the source kicks off with a pretty powerful idea. It says science is now kind of catching up, confirming what ancient traditions always seem to know.
That everything's connected.
Yeah, fundamentally.
You look at indigenous cultures, they always started there, didn't they? We're part of a basic connection.
And Western science started arriving there
Well,
in late 90s, early 2000s.
around then, yeah. Through, more sophisticated experiments, modeling, they started seeing this interconnectedness.
And this ties into the idea of a field, right? An intelligent energy field linking everything.
Exactly. The source calls it the divine matrix, or sometimes just the matrix of all matter.
Okay, and Max Planck,
Hmm.
he talked about this, the father of quantum physics.
Astonishingly, yeah. Way back in 1944, he said matter exists because of a conscious and intelligent mind,
Wow.
and called the underlying substance a matrix of all matter. It's kind of remarkable looking back, especially given where science went for a bit.
Right, because the source highlights these two big assumptions Western science made.
Yeah.
Assumptions that turned out to be, well, the source says, flat wrong.
Uh-huh. The first big one was that the space between things is empty. Nothing there.
Which came from interpreting experiments like Michelson-Morley in 1887.
Largely, yeah. The interpretation suggested no universal field was detectable, so therefore everything must be separate. What happens here doesn't affect things over there instantly.
Okay, separation. And the second assumption.
Tied to that, really, it was the idea that our inner world, thoughts, feelings, emotions, beliefs, even prayer, that it all just stays inside, no effect on the world outside our bodies.
But now science is saying, nope.
Pretty much. The source is clear. Science now knows there is something in the nothing, something connecting it all.
And crucially, our internal stuff does seem to affect the external world.
Exactly.
So what are the properties of this divine matrix or field, according to the source?
Well, first, it's seen as the container for the whole universe, maybe even higher dimensions. And it acts as a bridge between our inner world, thoughts and feelings, and the outer physical world.
So that's how maybe, like, prayers or intentions could travel.
That's the idea presented. Yeah, they can be disseminated through this field, not just locally.
And the source uses this powerful analogy. It's like a mirror.
A mirror, exactly. Everywhere, all the time, reflecting back what we hold as truth. But not just what we say we believe.
So the deep stuff. Heartfelt beliefs, even unconscious ones.
That's the suggestion. It reflects those deeper truths, which is why the source argues our relationships or finances or health, they can feel like reflections of our inner state.
That's a powerful thought. The world mirroring us back. Does this connect to entanglement? We hear that word a lot.
Absolutely. Entanglement is science's term for this deep connection, how particles, matter, can be linked through this field.
So if you affect one.
The other seems to react instantly, yeah. No matter the distance. It's how science is grappling with this non-local connection stuff.
It's fascinating, isn't it? How these really deep ideas, unseen connections, the power of our inner world keep popping up in popular culture. The source even asks, like, is consciousness itself trying to tell us something through art, music, movies?
That's a cool question. What are movies like The Matrix or Avatar or Inception tapping into? They're huge hits.
Well, they definitely share themes, right?
Yeah.
There's some unseen world influencing us.
Uh-huh.
Our limits only seem real until we wake up to how that world works.
And everyone has the potential to wake up, to go beyond those limits.
Yeah, and the source points specifically to the movie Arrival. It says it opens the door to another key piece, language.
Ah, right. The power of language. How does arrival fit in?
According to the source, its theme is that the language we use every day actually shapes our brain.
Like physically
Yeah.
wiring the neurons.
Yeah, and that influences how we think and what we think.
Okay, think about just the act of speaking. The source describes it as, like, really potent.
Taking in breath, sacred breath.
Using the diaphragm, vibrating vocal cords, sending out sound waves, we're masters at it, physically.
But the crucial bit, the source says, isn't just the physical act, it's the structure of the language.
How so?
Well, English and many others are kind of built on separation, you know?
Yeah.
You versus me, them versus us, winners versus losers.
The language of conflict.
Right. Versus languages based on connection, which apparently foster unity thinking.
Language geared towards, like, evolution, community, cooperation.
Exactly. So the bottom line seems pretty big.
Change your language. Change your brain.
Yeah. And change the language, change how your brain taps into this matrix.
Following from language, the source brings up another really thought-provoking thing about memory.
Oh, yeah. What about it?
Well, what if memory isn't actually stored in our neurons, like not in the brain or heart cells themselves?
Okay. So where would it be?
The idea is that neurons might be more like biological antenna, sophisticated ones.
Antennas tuning into what?
Tuning into a place in the field, a place where memories actually reside.
Whoa. Is that just like a theory?
Well, the source says engineers are reportedly designing future computer chips based on this very idea.
Get out.
Yeah. They were looking for natural stuff that could hold tons of information, and they landed on water.
Water for computer chips.
Uh-huh. And when they worked with these water-based chips, they found the information wasn't just in the water droplet.
Where was it?
It seemed to be held in a field linked to the droplet, a field extending beyond the machine itself.
Okay, that is wild.
Yeah.
So information isn't just stuck in our bodies or a chip.
It's potentially stored out there, in the world around us. And how we access it, that's the powerful part.
This leads to that story in the source, right? The musician friend in New Mexico.
Yeah, beautiful story. He'd worked on this amazing piece of music for over a year, refining it, but just didn't feel it was ready, never released it.
Okay.
And then, this is where it gets really interesting. He's driving one day, radio's on.
And he hears his music.
Played by someone else. His music.
No way.
The explanation offered is, once he'd fully formed it, worked on it with intention, he'd anchored his creation in the field.
Anchored it. Wow.
So it wasn't just his anymore. It became available out there in the field for anyone else tuned into that same place in the field to pick up on.
Like the radio analogy. Tuning in.
Exactly. The source mentions similar stuff happening with book titles, people coming up with the exact same title independently at the same time.
So the takeaway for you listening, if you get a creative impulse, an idea, a song.
It's not just random. According to the source, it means the world might actually be ready for that creation right then.
So share it. Put it out there. The world needs those gifts, and maybe they're already kind of echoing in the field.
Okay, so if we're connected through this field, the next big question for science isn't if we're connected anymore, but how deep does it go?
Right. And how much influence do we actually have through this connection?
And the source highlights two specific experiments. Pretty futuristic-sounding experiments, actually. They offer some compelling evidence.
What's the first one?
It's a Russian experiment, Lebedev Physics Institute, published back in '92.
Okay.
They started simple, a vacuum vessel. Inside, just random photons, the basic particles of light, of matter.
Just floating around randomly? Then what?
Then they put human DNA into the vessel.
Hey.
Instantly, the photons weren't random anymore. They became ordered. They arranged themselves following the geometry, the shape of the DNA.
Wow. So the stuff we're made of, DNA, directly affected the stuff the world's made of, photons.
By communicating through this field, it seems.
What does the scientists say? I mean, that sounds pretty groundbreaking.
The source quotes their paper from '95 in Nanobiology. They said the photons behaved surprisingly and counterintuitively.
Yeah, I bet.
They felt forced to accept the possibility that some new field of energy is being excited by the DNA.
A new field.
Yeah.
Or maybe one they just hadn't recognized.
That's what the source suggests, yeah. Not new, just newly recognized by science. But the confirmation is there. Human DNA influences matter via the field.
Okay, experiment 1. DNA affects matter. What's the second one?
This one pushes it even further. Published in the Journal of Scientific Exploration, 1994.
Okay.
They used pristine human DNA from umbilical cords, isolated it in a special container.
Right. And the question was,
can human emotion from a different person influence that isolated DNA.
Ah, so emotions affect, but at a distance.
Exactly. They place the DNA within the measurable energy field of a human heart.
Right.
That field extends out a few feet.
And we know emotion affects our own DNA, right? The source mentions that.
Yeah, it reminds us negative emotions, anger, hate, jealousy, frustration, they tend to make our DNA tighten up, coil, limits expression, affects immunity, anti-aging stuff.
Whereas positive emotions, compassion, gratitude, appreciation, yeah, they make the DNA relax, loosen up.
Allows for fuller expression, yeah. So in this experiment, they had people trained to generate specific, strong, positive emotions.
And focus them on the isolated DNA.
You got it. Deep love, appreciation, directed right at that container of DNA.
And the result.
Profound. In the presence of those positive emotions, the isolated DNA, it physically relaxed. It began to unwind.
Like it was getting ready to replicate, heal itself.
That's how it behaved, yeah. As if preparing for a new vitalized state.
What did these scientists say?
They were quoted saying, individuals trained in feelings of deep love and appreciation were able to intentionally change the shape of the DNA.
Intentionally change it.
Wow. And crucially, that human emotion produces effects which defy conventional laws of physics.
Defy physics. Okay,
Yeah.
so let's connect the dots here, like the source does.
Right. Experiment 1, human DNA changes matter.
Experiment 2, human emotion changes DNA.
So the logical conclusion presented is human emotion changes matter.
Directly, through this field.
And the source stresses this isn't some weird superpower for, monks on a mountaintop.
It's framed as an internal technology, something inherent in all of us.
Available to every single human, yeah. If we choose to understand it, embrace it.
That is a lot to process. And it feels like it connects to another really fundamental thing in physics, the double slit experiment.
Ah, yeah, the classic. First done way back, 1909, then famously repeated in 98, always had that mystery at its core.
Explain it quickly.
Sure. You shoot particles, like photons, at a wall with 2 slits in it, and you see where they land on a screen behind the wall.
Simple enough. So what's the mystery?
The result completely changes depending on whether you're watching the particles go through the slits or not watching.
Seriously, watching changes it.
Fundamentally, if you don't watch, the photons act like waves. They spread out, create an interference pattern, like they went through both slits at once.
Okay.
But the instant you put a detector there, the moment you observe which slit they go through, poof, they act like particles. Solid little things, creating just 2 distinct lines behind the slits.
The act of watching collapses the wave, makes it choose particle form.
That's the quantum mystery, yeah. Observation determines the physical behavior.
Which has huge implications, right?
Yeah.
Thinking about healing, prayer.
Massive. It suggests a possible mechanism, doesn't it? How focused intention might have a real non-local effect. Those studies showing prayer helps people recover. Maybe this is part of how.
The 1998 repeat experiment at Weizmann Institute used electrons, right? Confirmed the same thing.
Confirm the observer effect again, yeah. But the source highlights something else crucial they found. Published in Nature.
What was that?
The greater the amount of watching, the greater the observer's influence on what actually takes place.
More focus, bigger effect.
Exactly. More focused attention, a stronger influence on the physical outcome.
And this isn't even a new idea necessarily. The source connects it to ancient wisdom.
Right. It mentions a Mahayana Buddhist sutra. Reality exists only where the mind creates a focus. The principle seems to have been understood.
Which brings us to that debate. Einstein versus John Wheeler.
Yeah, 2 giants, friends, colleagues. Einstein, looking for his unified field theory, but really uncomfortable with quantum weirdness.
That spooky action at a distance. He hated that entanglement stuff.
Fundamentally, yeah. He saw us as separate observers, watching a fixed reality from outside.
But Wheeler looked at the same math.
And drew totally different conclusions about our role. He rejected that old view, the observer safely protected by a 6-inch slab of plate glass.
He said.
The source quotes him. There are no observers. We must put in the new word, participator.
Participator, not observer. What did he mean by that?
It's incredibly powerful. Wheeler suggested that every time we look out into the universe, into nature, expecting something to be there,
Our expectation.
that expectation, that act of focused looking, puts something there. The act of looking is an act of creation. We're not separate. We're participating in making reality happen.
Wow. That implies we might never find the smallest particle or the edge of the universe.
Because our act of looking, our participation, ensures there will always be something more to see, another layer unfolding because we're interacting with it.
So let's try and wrap this up. If science, through experiments like these, is really showing us our inner state, our emotions, focus, beliefs, can influence the physical world,
Uh-huh.
and that we're not just watching the show, we're in the show,
Hmm.
active participators.
It really raises a crucial question for all of us, doesn't it?
It does. If reality exists where the mind creates a focus, and the amount of focus shapes our influence
What does that mean about our potential? Maybe untapped potential.
to shape our own lives,
Yeah.
our world. So the question for you listening is, what are you choosing to focus on?
What reality are you actively participating in creating right now?